There's a moment most people never talk about, not because it's rare, but because when it happens, it's unsettling in a way that's hard to explain. It doesn't feel like a breakthrough. It doesn't feel empowering. It feels like something is off. You start noticing things you didn't before, patterns in people's behavior, contradictions in what they say versus what they do. The way conversations repeat themselves like scripts no one admits they're following. At first you think it's just overthinking. That word gets thrown around a lot. Overthinking, as if your mind is doing something wrong, as if seeing too much is a defect. So you try to stop. You distract yourself. You scroll. You tell yourself you're just tired or stressed or imagining things. But it doesn't go away. Because what you're experiencing isn't noise. It's clarity trying to surface. And clarity doesn't arrive all at once. It leaks in slowly through discomfort. That uneasy feeling when something sounds normal, but doesn't feel true. That quiet hesitation before you agree with something you don't fully believe. That strange awareness that people aren't always saying what they actually mean. You begin to realize something subtle but powerful. Most interactions aren't real. Not fake in an obvious way, but filtered, adjusted, performed. And the more you notice it, the harder it becomes to ignore. This is usually the point where people pull back. They call it overthinking. They label it anxiety. They convince themselves they're the problem because that's easier than questioning everything else. But what if that discomfort isn't a flaw? What if it's the first crack in something you were never supposed to see? Because once you start noticing the illusion, you don't just think differently. You see differently. And that changes everything. The strange part isn't that the world changes. It's that it doesn't. Everything looks the same on the outside. Same conversations, same routines, same people doing the same things. But something inside you refuses to experience it the same way. You start hearing what's not being said. A compliment that feels slightly forced. A laugh that comes half a second too late. A "I'm fine" that carries something underneath it. And once you notice these things, you can't unnotice them. It's like your brain stops accepting the surface as the full story. You begin to sense the layers, the hidden motivations, the subtle insecurities, the quiet need people have to be seen, validated, or accepted. And suddenly, interactions feel heavier. Not because they are, but because now you're aware of everything inside them. This is where it gets confusing, because from the outside nothing justifies how you feel. So you start questioning yourself. Why does everything feel so intense? Why can't I just relax like everyone else? Why do I see things that others don't seem to notice? And again, the answer that comes up is always the same. Overthinking. But here's what most people don't realize. Overthinking is usually repetitive. It loops. It circles the same fears over and over. What you're experiencing is different. It's not repetition, it's expansion. Your mind isn't stuck. It's going deeper. And depth comes with a cost, because the deeper you see, the harder it becomes to stay on the surface. Small talk feels empty. Certain relationships start to feel misaligned. Even your own habits begin to feel automatic, almost programmed. That's when a quiet question begins to form. How much of this is real, and how much of it is just learned behavior? And once that question appears, it doesn't leave. At some point it stops being about other people and starts becoming about you. That's where things get uncomfortable in a different way. Because it's one thing to see through the patterns around you, it's another thing to see them within yourself. You begin to notice how often you say things automatically, how certain reactions come out before you even think, how parts of your personality feel rehearsed, not fake, but inherited, learned over time without you realizing it. You start asking questions you never asked before. Do I actually believe this, or did I just pick it up somewhere? Is this really me, or just who I learned to be? And there's no immediate answer, just silence, because identity isn't something most people examine, it's something they assume. But now that assumption is breaking, and in its place, there's uncertainty, not the kind that panics you, but the kind that destabilizes everything, just enough to make you pause. Even your past starts to look different. Moments you thought you understood suddenly reveal new meanings. Decisions you made start to feel influenced by things you didn't notice at the time. It's like looking at your life from a slightly different angle and realizing the story isn't as simple as it seemed. This is where many people stop, not because they can't go further, but because going further means letting go of certainty, and certainty feels safe, even if it's incomplete. But if you stay with it, if you don't run from that discomfort, something shifts. You stop trying to find immediate answers and start observing instead, quietly, without forcing conclusions. And that's when you begin to see something even deeper. You were never just thinking too much. You were starting to see through the structure you were living inside. Once that structure starts to become visible, you begin to notice how much of life runs on autopilot. People repeat behaviors without questioning them, follow routines without understanding why, react in predictable ways over and over again. And for the first time, you see it happening in real time, not in a judgmental way, but in a clear, almost detached way. It's like watching patterns unfold instead of being fully inside them. Someone gets defensive, another avoids discomfort with humor, someone else seeks approval without even realizing it. And you recognize it. Because you've done the same, that's what makes it different. This isn't about feeling superior. It's about becoming aware. And awareness changes your relationship with everything. You start pausing before reacting, noticing impulses before acting on them, seeing choices where there used to be automatic responses. And in those small pauses, something new appears. Space. Space between what happens and how you respond to it. Most people never notice that space. They live inside reaction. But once you see it, you realize you're not as controlled by your patterns as you thought. And that realization is powerful, but also isolating. Because while you're noticing all of this, most people aren't. They're still moving through the same loops, having the same conversations, living inside the same structures, and you start to feel slightly out of sync. Not disconnected completely, but not fully aligned either. It's subtle, but it's there. And the more aware you become, the harder it is to pretend you don't see it. This is usually where people misunderstand what's happening. They think something is wrong with them, that they've become too distant, too analytical, too disconnected from normal life. But that's not what this is. You're not disconnecting. You're seeing the mechanisms behind connection, and that changes how it feels, because once you understand the patterns, you can't experience them the same way. You start craving something more real, more honest, less scripted, and that naturally creates distance from anything that feels forced. Not because you want to withdraw, but because your mind no longer settles for surface-level interactions. You begin to value silence more than empty conversation, depth more than frequency, presence more than performance. And that shift is quiet, but profound. It doesn't make your life louder, it makes it clearer. You stop trying to fit into spaces that don't resonate. Stop forcing reactions that don't feel natural. Stop pretending to be aligned with things that no longer make sense. And in that process, you lose certain things, but you also gain something most people don't even realize they're missing: clarity. Not the kind that gives you all the answers, but the kind that removes what isn't true. And sometimes, that's more important. There's a reason this feels uncomfortable, because illusions aren't meant to be noticed. They're meant to be lived in. They provide structure, predictability, a sense of stability, and when that starts to crack, it doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like uncertainty, like you've stepped slightly outside of something everyone else is still inside. But here's what most people never realize. The discomfort isn't the problem. It's the transition. You're not losing your ability to think clearly. You're refining it. You're not becoming disconnected from reality. You're seeing more of it. And yes, that comes with moments of isolation, moments where things feel different, quieter, even distant. But it also comes with something rare: the ability to choose consciously, to see patterns without being controlled by them, to engage without losing awareness, to think without being trapped inside your thoughts. And that's the difference. Overthinking traps you. Awareness frees you. What you're experiencing isn't your mind working against you. It's your perception evolving beyond what feels comfortable. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, "That's too much. I need to stop overthinking," pause and consider something else. What if you're not thinking too much? What if you're finally seeing clearly? And once you see clearly, you don't go back. You move forward differently.